Aiboan, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening. Welcome to episode 6 of the AmCham Sri Lanka Modern Workplace series. Today on this exciting series where we aim to learn the latest and evolving trends, tips, and tricks to increase productivity as well as to disrupt the paradigm and think out of the box, we are taking on a very transformative topic, gender inclusivity, and even to an extent, diversity in your sourcing and procurement. We'll be focusing on the importance of supply diversity and inclusion so that you would continue to evolve and grow with your organization or industry to remain not just relevant, but ahead of the curve. Now, your speaker this evening, let me do a quick introduction and then request him to switch his camera on so that you can see him as well, is Mr. Michael J. Tabalski, Vice President of Member Development at WeConnect International. Michael, if you would switch your camera on so that we can say a nice big hi to you. So Michael is the Vice President of Member Development for WeConnect International. His focus is, of course, member development and engagement. His prior corporate experience includes working as a Senior Director of Supply Diversity at Marriott International, where he developed Marriott's formal supplier program. Within the Marriott itself actually included hotel controller, director of purchasing and food and beverage as well. Michael also worked at Walt Disney World, where he oversaw F&B operations in several of the resort hotels. As an entrepreneur, Michael also co-founded and operated several businesses, including a 3-restaurant company in Northern Virginia. Dedicated to community service, he has served as chair of the board of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council, chair of the National Minority Supply Development Council's Hospitality Industry Group, and was an active member of the procurement committees for the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Michael currently serves as the vice president on the board of a national nonprofit organization and resides in Maryland with his wife, Christine. Now, also joining us today on this call is Mr. Philip Loosely, the Chief Economic and Political Officer of the U.S. Embassy, the Embassy of the United States in Sri Lanka and the Maldives. And I'm going to hand over to Phil now to make some opening remarks and do a formal introduction to the importance of the work that WeConnect is doing and how important it is to us as a business community going forward. Phil, over to you.
Thank you so much, Fry. Yes, my name is Phil Loosely, and I'm here representing the U.S. Embassy and by extension, the U.S. government. And I'm very pleased that we have such an appropriate and experienced speaker this evening for this webinar. Obviously, the U.S. government's commitment for inclusive business is the reason why we're here. We know that with this COVID pandemic, that the economic recovery that all of our economies are facing is going to be a big challenge, and small businesses, inclusive businesses, women-owned businesses are all going to be a huge part of that effort. President Biden says getting our economy back means bringing our small businesses back. And so the US government's focusing on small business growth. The United States has already increased the share of funding for small businesses with fewer than 10 employees by nearly 60%. For businesses in rural communities, the share of funding is up nearly 30%. Additionally, the share of funding distributed through banks that traditionally help minority-owned businesses is up by more than 40%. The U.S. Department of State funded WeConnect International to implement a 3-year project on women empowerment through economic inclusion. The objective of this project is to promote sustainable development and gender equality, with a focus on connecting women-led SMEs to training, finance, or corporate supply chains. The United States supports a range of other efforts in Sri Lanka that are empowering women in business. We support organizations like WeConnect International because the American people believe that no country can achieve its full economic potential if half the population is hindered in contributing their talents and ideas. We invite corporate leaders to learn about the benefits of supplier diversity, inclusion, and gender inclusive sourcing, and provide qualified women-owned businesses opportunities to participate in these procurement processes. These actions demonstrate a deeper commitment to the investments that we can make in keeping families out of poverty and preventing long-term economic damage. And for that reason, this is a very important topic tonight, and I'm very happy that we'll have such a good speaker. And so I will stop there and hope that for a very fruitful conversation. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity and good evening. We're looking forward to a great presentation and discussion. We have some time at the end for questions and answers, but we'll start to talk about gender inclusive sourcing and best practices. So today we'll cover the history of supplier diversity and inclusion, the business case, because it does need to tie into the bottom line, the women business landscape in Sri Lanka, best practices for beginning and growing gender inclusive sourcing, and a brief overview of our organization, We Connect International, with some time at the end for Q&A. So beginning in the US, in the 1970s, the federal government said, look, we're interested in having support for our minority businesses. So they asked corporations that are looking to do business with the federal government to actually include diverse suppliers in their contracting. So the corporations got together and they formed an organization called NMSDC, which is really the foundation of certifying these businesses as being at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by one or more minorities. Over time, it expanded to include women, disabled-owned businesses, and other historically underutilized groups within the supply chains. And the focus of supply diversity and inclusion is really providing the opportunities to those that have not been included in the past, whether through bias, which is unconscious or unconscious, or perhaps just not even considering that women businesses, in our case, can be competitive and viable. So international supply diversity and inclusion started in the early 2000s. We are, for example, formed by multinational corporations to actually identify and certify women businesses around the globe. And as I mentioned earlier, that's 51% minimum ownership, management, and control. And that is really the gold standard to ensure that the women businesses have the opportunity to compete and that they are who they say they are. And it's just not a paper transaction where someone puts the woman business as an owner. So they have to be the ones actually demonstrating leadership and control in their organization. So the business case, and this is really interesting, less than 1% today of large corporate and government spend goes to women businesses around the world, even though they make up about a third of all privately owned businesses. We did a survey with our members this past year, and they reported spending $2 billion US with women businesses outside of the US. And even though that sounds significant, it's still less than 0.5% of their total spend. So there still continues to be a great opportunity for inclusion. Women make or influence the majority of consumer purchasing decisions around the globe. It's significant, especially if you're a consumer brand facing company. And I'd like to share a little brief video that we did about what is supply diversity and inclusion. This was just completed last year, and hope you enjoyed it. Just 3 minutes.
Diversity at work, inclusion in your community, across the globe. What makes you different? What sets your business apart is what makes you successful. But there's something you might be overlooking, which can make even more of a difference. Diversity and inclusion in your supply chain. Diverse-owned businesses are those that are at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by women, minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender people, or individuals with disabilities, and taking an active role in giving them equal access to purchasing opportunities is a business strategy that puts you on a path to greater profit. How do you benefit? As your markets expand, you can better identify the best suppliers by finding diverse-owned businesses that are competitive in quality, service, and price. Diverse businesses are developing more innovative solutions. You can benefit from the value their entrepreneurial approaches bring. Increase supplier diversity, you increase competition. And by broadening your supplier base, you can access the right solutions at the right price for significant savings. Since women make or influence over 85% of consumer purchasing decisions, when they do better economically, they make better consumers. Demonstrating how you empower these decision makers strengthens your brand. Over 1,000 multinationals now focus on sourcing from diverse-owned businesses, and they expect the same from their partners. It's an opportunity for your business to develop a competitive differentiator through inclusive sourcing. The best employees want to work at organizations with demonstrated success around sustainability and all aspects of diversity, including supply chains. Supplier diversity also has a significant impact on your local economy. Right now, for example, 30% of all private businesses are owned by women, but they receive less than 1% of corporate and government spend. By empowering those businesses that best represent the communities where your company works, you lift up families and communities and open up more opportunities for your business to grow. So what's the bottom line when it comes to supplier diversity and inclusion? A positive impact on yours, a high return on investment that boosts your business and your brand. Push supplier diversity to the forefront of your business strategy, and you can be the difference, make a difference, and see the difference.
Well, hopefully that gives you a little overview and perspective on the business case for supplier diversity and inclusion. There are many benefits, and this is just a general slide that we talk about why it's important and how it can tie to the bottom line. So first, it's about mirroring your global customer and employee base. And as mentioned in that short video, many young folks especially want to look for working with companies that have proven and demonstrated effort around diversity and inclusion, sustainability, the environment, et cetera. So it's a really strong business case by itself, but also mirroring your global customer and employee base. All the countries where you do business, not just Sri Lanka, but if you're sourcing from other operations, that's also important to look for women businesses that could be included in supply chains. It's supporting your corporate clients. Those that are looking to do this work around the world are asking their prime suppliers, large other corporations, to actually source from women businesses, include them in their value chain. It's about finding innovative suppliers. Many women businesses are started because they are frustrated working large corporations and they have great ideas or they feel stifled. And so they go out and start their own businesses and are very competitive and successful. That $2 billion spend that I mentioned earlier in the conversation, they were all competitive in quality, service, and price. They were not hired because they're women-owned businesses. They were hired because they did great work and were very competitive and brought value in terms of their corporations. It's about supporting business growth, especially in developing economies. It's about reducing costs through increased competition. I can tell you my past experience. I found a diverse supplier that I thought was really great. They did latex gloves. I brought it to the procurement group and they said, well, we already have someone, they're going to be more expensive. But I didn't give up and I stayed with them for about 6 months, bringing it up again. And they finally put it out to bid and they found that this diverse supplier came in at 15% lower than the incumbent. So I just needed that one validation. You can't assume just because a woman business is different than your current supplier that they're not going to be competitive and can bring value. So it's really important to actually put them out to bid. Many of our corporations, including IBM today, they have a process in place that anytime an RFP goes out anywhere in the world, that they have to include at least one diverse supplier in the bid process, or it has to get signed off by their headquarters. So that's just a great best practice and highly recommended. It's about supporting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, especially number 5. Thousands of CEOs around the world have signed up to support these, but not all are taking advantage of organizations like We Connect, where we can help members actually identify and bring in the women business suppliers to meet their needs. So it's really important to look at any resource that's available to help you in terms of what you're trying to start. And it's about enhancing the corporate brand with community engagement. Many times the public persona of a company is really important in the brand, especially again on the consumer-facing brands. So it's urgent to make sure that you include women in the process, not only in how you hire in your company, but how you staff and supply chains. So now Sri Lanka, the landscape. So in our database, which we call We Community, which was funded by USAID, we have over 600 women businesses that are registered in our system. On this graph on the right, you can see the little breakdown that we have. The majority are in food and beverage, textiles. Next, we have other is a larger category, but we also have a nice cross section of all the other types of women businesses that are represented already. 25% of businesses are run by women or entrepreneurs or decision makers, where the rural areas, 35% is higher than that of the urban areas. And it represents multiple sectors, as you can see here, but less than 10% of the women businesses have a contract today with large buying organizations. So there is great opportunity in Sri Lanka for that. So now we're going to talk briefly about best practices for beginning and growing gender inclusive sourcing efforts. So first of all, it's important to have a strong business case. As I mentioned earlier, tying it to the bottom line, looking at your corporate clients, do they have supplier diversity initiatives and do they have requirements for you to look at this? It's important to have senior leadership support at the top of the organization to be visible and have a corporate policy that not only includes HR diversity and inclusion, but also includes supply chain diversity. Identify the current women-owned businesses that are already in your system. I would guarantee that they are already there in your system. It's just that they have not said anything and no one has asked. We had one of our members, Pfizer in Mexico, added a question onto their annual vendor survey and asked, are you a woman-owned business? Well, they sent out 1,000 surveys. They had about 300 responses and they found 64 women businesses in the supply chain that had no idea were there. So there is certainly an opportunity to identify the women businesses in there. We did a research project in Bangladesh recently with the World Bank, and we found several women businesses there in textiles that were doing over 50 million US in annual revenues that nobody knew they were existing as a women-owned business. So there's certainly a great opportunity for that. It's about measuring spend and establishing a baseline, find out where you're at. Once you identify the women businesses that may be already in your system, and see if they're doing a great job, how you can help them grow to the next level. Identify and engage company advocates. This is probably one of the more important factors. It is really important to have passionate change agents because there will be resistance. There will be people to say, I don't understand. Why do we need to do this? I already have a great supplier. And the fact is you don't know until you put it out to bid again to see if there's someone better that can do a great job. Nobody's going to hire a woman business just because she's woman owned, but because of bias, they have not had the opportunity in general to participate in these bidding events. So it is important to have a process in place where you can be sure that they're at least being included in the bid process. And of course, there are organizations like WeConnect that can help you identify where they are already in your supply chain and externally through our networks. Identify procurement opportunities. And this is also important. We know whatever you have coming up, whether it's 1 year, 6 months, or 3 years in advance, is to make sure when they come close to the bidding opportunity time frame that you can include the women businesses as part of that process. And certainly you have resources such as WeConnect International that we can help identify where those suppliers are. And then of course, there's tracking and measurement. Nothing gets done typically in a corporation unless it's being tracked and measured and goals have been established. So it is really critical to establish those goals and have a mechanism where you can actually track progress and performance. Many of our members determine once they have a baseline as a set goals, whether internal only or internal and external, which helps galvanize the organization to attain those objectives. So now we're going to talk a little bit about WeConnect International. We are a member-led organization. We were formed about 14 years ago by multinational corporations. We currently have over 140 members working with us, but some of the organizations as well as corporations include the IMF, the World Bank, and the United Nations. So we all focus because it's been shown that when women are successful, they tend to give back more to their communities. We do the certification. We primarily do two things. We certify women businesses to validate the 51% ownership, management, and control in 50 countries, including Sri Lanka coming up, and I'll show you where those countries are in a minute. But we also do what we call registration, where a woman business anywhere in the world, as long as it's from a non-sanctioned US country, we can include them in our database, and there's no cost for signing up to become part of our community. So we work with our corporate member buyers to create and implement international inclusive sourcing strategies, whether it's based in a country, a region, or globally. And we work to connect the buyers with the women-owned businesses. And we do this through several means. We have what we call WeCommunity, our database, which you can use as a tool to search as a member. You can look at posting business opportunities directly into our system. And we also do networking events and conferences where matchmakers meet the member events where we bring the buyers and the sellers together based on specific needs. And then one of the key areas we focus on is building the capacity of the women-owned businesses to help get them to the next level, to access markets. So one of the things we've done is work on capacity development, focusing on how they can grow their business in terms of financing opportunities, scaling, et cetera. One of our members, Moody's, has been putting together a literacy training program on financial acumen. So it just gives you a sense of some of our members being very active in the role of helping to develop those women businesses and get them to the next level. And some even have mentoring programs that they've implemented. And of course, we can also connect the women businesses with each other. We have several women businesses in our network that are over 1 billion US in annual revenues. So yes, many of them are small to medium sized, but there are several that are very large and very capable, and they can learn to do business with one another as well. So here's a list of our global members. You can see some of the largest corporations in the world are working with us, the ExxonMobils, the Walmarts, Google, Facebook, among others. And they've all started with us because they see this as a benefit to be part of the community where we can help them with resources, support, program development, and of course, connecting the women businesses to business opportunities that they have. And many of these corporations have set some really aggressive goals. Unilever is one of our members, and they just recently set a goal of spending 2 billion euros with diverse businesses, including women, by 2025. So we've been working with them around the globe to help them get their program off the ground and help identify where the women businesses are, and of course, develop capacity. So in terms of the countries where we certify, we tend to go to the markets where our corporate members are buying from and sourcing from and operating. So we started off just in the UK and Canada when we first began, and now have expanded to this plus 50 countries now. And Sri Lanka is coming on board in terms of certification in the very near future. So these are all the key markets. We've added France also this year. We're looking to add Spain in the near future, the UAE. I believe Thailand is coming on board soon as well. So we continue to expand this effort, and it is really an inclusive network of diverse suppliers, women businesses around the globe that can participate in this. So I wanted to share with you too, on our website, we have a lot of great resources. I'm going to just take you there real quick so you can see what we have available. Under our buyer membership, and this is all available to anyone, we have the Supply Diversity and Resources page. So we have the C-suite video that you just saw. We've put together a UN Sustainable Development Goals and Business Case webinar for Asia Pacific. This happened this past summer. And so what we typically do is we have our regional representatives of corporations that actually go out and participate in these events with us and share their best practices. So there's some great information that's available here. We have a business case report we put together several years ago on how to tie it to the bottom line. We have this gold standard checklist I wanted to share with you. It's available for download. We developed this with IBM, and it's a 100-point checklist that you can download and use as a roadmap and a tool to assess where are you today in terms of supplier diversity, where do you start, and what are all the components needed to have a successful and sustainable effort. And so again, it's open to everyone, so we highly recommend that. And if you have questions on it afterwards, we're happy to talk to you about it and help you think through the plans and actions afterwards. We have webinars in different parts of the world. And then we have a list of tier 2 options here for you as well. We did a tier 2 toolkit, and we have tier 2 in the global value chain webinar that we did just to show how you can engage your supply chain. And it's not just you that is important in terms of buying from women or being inclusive, but it's your entire supply chain. So there are great tools and resources available to help you establish a tier 2 effort where you can include your prime suppliers in this effort as well. And some of our members also include spend tracking for their prime suppliers as well as part of their supplier scorecards. We have information here. There's a Hackett Group report that came out recently, just a few months ago, that talks about a global perspective on supplier diversity and inclusion. There are a lot of great takeaways and tools that can help you understand the business case and why other corporations are doing this, including C-suite support that has been really prominent over the past year or so. And then we do have information about some of our key markets. This is about the key markets where we operate and where we certify. There are tools and resources available here as well that give you snapshots of the different countries where we operate in. So we have, as I mentioned, the business case reports, we have the webinars, tier 2 resources. There's even a supplier code of conduct that I didn't touch on in the research. So in addition to being a member-led organization that provides a database, we are a partner in terms of a community of resources and support and networking that can help members get started and learn how to grow their efforts and overcome some of the obstacles so you do not have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so I've gone through this fairly quickly. I'd like to open it up now for questions and comments, anything we can assist with.
Michael, sorry. A little bit of an audio issue there. Let me jump in and share a couple of the questions that we had received previously. So this is coming from multiple questions across the platforms. I'm just going to club it together. Basically, what a couple of our viewers would like to do is understand in terms of a growing economy in the Asian region, and especially, I guess, not only for Sri Lanka, but within the entire Southeast Asian region, where there is a lot of women-led and women-owned, I guess, enterprise, which kind of keeps the home fires burning. How important is it for the economic development of the country, and how it connects to what you are doing at WeConnect, and how it connects to gender inclusivity in terms of building both best practices, but also in terms of building a sustainable economic growth?
So I don't have the statistics on that particular region, but I can tell you overall that it's in the trillions in terms of the potential impact. And, you know, the US State Department has one of their mottos as peace through prosperity. And I think that's also one of the pieces to understand, that when women are successful in business, in government, and in leadership, they can contribute to a more stable environment in the community, aside from reinvesting in their businesses and their communities. Roshan, do you have any perspective on the region, perhaps, that you can share?
No, Michael, I don't have any data to share on that question. Yes.
So we can do some research and come back to you and provide some information.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So another question that we have is okay. So given the impact of COVID-19, work from home situations, and the various, I suppose, conundrums and challenges that have been posed around it, there is a prevalence of women falling out of the workforce. How do you see this impacting gender inclusive sourcing and procurement?
We have several women businesses that have actually excelled and been able to pivot because of COVID. It is certainly a challenge, and many industries, and such as hospitality and restaurants, have been affected negatively. But we had one woman business in India, though, has grown her business tremendously. She was doing relocations. And when the relocation stopped because of the COVID, she actually started working on trying to set up home businesses so that the remote workers can actually have all the tools and resources needed to do their work. So she actually grew. So I think at any business owner, it's really important to, you know, be able to adapt and pivot and learn, if I can't do what I've been doing, how can I grow my business and take advantage of the current opportunity? So there are many corporations in our network that have experienced a negative downturn in terms of business, and others have grown. So I think it's important to look at shifting your client base in some cases to focus on the ones that are currently growing.
Right. So if I could just take from something that Phil said, which is how the Biden administration and the US government views the importance of gender inclusivity. How would we connect this back to modern workplaces and best practices? And, you know, in terms of our AmCham membership, for instance, right, which is all the corporates and the blue chips in Sri Lanka, how impactful would you say gender inclusivity would be in terms of their business practices, and especially when you're looking at, so the AmCham membership is primarily in bilateral business with the USA. So how important would you see this as a factor?
I think it's very critical today in terms of growth. even from a consumer standpoint, there's an app that I have on my phone called Boycott, and you can put in what's important to you. You can say, I'm looking for, fair trade companies, diversity, etc. And when you go shopping, you scan that product code and it tells you a score based on your criteria. And I would say in 5 or 10 years, this type of thing is going to be mainstream around the world, whereas we as consumers will have so much power over supporting the corporations that we believe are doing great work and those that are not. So the companies that understand this are taking advantage of that now and making sure that they're really demonstrating an effort to be inclusive in the workforce and the supply chains. Others may be just waiting for something to happen and they're forced into doing it. So if you look at a list of our members, those are all the ones that are proactive. They're actually taking the initiative to take the lead now and make sure that they're doing what they need to do to not only grow their business, but help support the communities around the world. So I see this as just continuing to grow in terms of importance around the world.
Great. Thank you, Michael. That's pretty much all the questions we have coming in from the audience at the moment. If there's anything more that you'd like to add to the presentation, or maybe if Hiroshan would like to give a little bit of insight in terms of how our members locally can get involved, connect with you guys, with WeConnect and the resources of WeConnect. I guess this would be a good time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hiroshan, you want to go first?
Yep. Thanks, Farah. Yep. So just to follow up, to add what Michael said about the interest of the corporate members, we have done an ecosystem research survey for South Asia, which includes Sri Lanka as well. And the survey found, revealed that out of 25 corporates that responded to the surveys and participated in the interview process, 80% of them said they have no experience on gender inclusive sourcing, but obviously they are interested to learn more about it and implement in their organization, which is kind of promising aspect for us. When we are looking at the willingness of these corporates to learn and practice something which is beneficial for the organization as well as the community and the country's economy. So that's where we are here today, and we would like to work with the corporate members at different points. So we will be having many roundtable events to understand their perspective and where they are stuck and what kind of assistance they need to implement this kind of methodology or systems in the organization. Because certainly to start something, they need some support from experts, to building the blocks and especially to understand where they can find women-owned businesses if they wanted to source from them, and how they can take the first step and how they can understand whether they have any women-owned businesses in their existing supplier chains and all. So we can support them to do a data scrub, and we can support them definitely to understand if they have any women-owned businesses in their network already, or if not, we can support them by linking the women-owned businesses that are in our database, if they have any RFPs and procurement opportunities. So there are multiple ways that they can join with us, and we can work mutually to grow together in the supply diversity and inclusion perspective. And the other thing is, like, WeConnect International usually conduct annual conference for South Asia or maybe Asia Pacific region. So we always welcome the participation from AmCham members for those kind of initiatives. So where they can meet the very qualified women-owned suppliers around South Asia and Asia Pacific, and beyond Sri Lanka as well. So that will give them an opportunity to understand the bigger perspective of the SDNI and the gender inclusive sourcing, as well as to understand the opportunities that are available to source from women-owned businesses beyond the region as well. So there are many opportunities as such, and the AmCham members also can become a member of WeConnect International to work more closely with us. And I would like Michael to spend a few minutes after I pose, so that the AmCham members can get an understanding about how they can become a member and within WeConnect International network, and how they can grow mutually along with us. So I pause there, and just handing it over back to Michael, if he can spend a few minutes to explain the membership development process.
Sure. Thank you, Roshan. Yes, so we offer memberships in both market regions and globally. So you have an access to our database based on the membership level that you would join. We really encourage you to look at our website where we have the benefits of membership. We can share additional information with you afterwards, but it's really to understand, again, the best practices network. It's almost like having a consultant with you through the process. So yes, we provide the database of women businesses, both certified and registered. We provide tools and best practices and resources, but we work with you and partner with you in terms of you growing your effort. One of the things that we're currently working on and we'll have available by November is we've put together a bias training video that shows the conscious and unconscious bias that exists and how it impacts women entrepreneurs around the world. So we've gotten a woman business from every continent to talk about one of the things that she's experienced in terms of discrimination. And it wasn't in the video, but one of the things we heard from one of the Asian businesses is that if she tells the male buyer she's woman-owned, they won't buy from her. And so some of it is overt, some of it's very subtle. So even though you may have great ideas and support for this initiative about gender inclusive sourcing, it may not be that the entire group is working on this at the same level. So we're looking to put this together in terms of also showing best practices from multinational corporations and what they're doing to mitigate bias. So I'm just sharing this with you as one of the things we focus on as we work to identify what are the challenges that exist today in the supply chains, where are the obstacles, and what are corporations doing to help mitigate those challenges. So we are truly, I think, a great resource and a thought leader in this space around the globe, and certainly want to be able to support everyone who's interested in growing their inclusive sourcing efforts.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Roshan. I think that kind of clears it up. What we will do is definitely share the contact details and the links with all of our participants, as well as we'll put up a slide with that on the closing so that you can connect. Feel free to call us up at AmCham as well, and we'll connect you with the team here at WeConnect, and definitely look at pushing this forward going into the future, being proactive. And as we said, not just remaining relevant, but staying ahead of the curve, being proactive, and making sure that we're looking at a sustainable growth trajectory and not just the here and now and today, not just for us, but for the future generations as well. So I guess that kind of brings us to the conclusion of this evening's session. Thank you, Michael, very much for taking the time, for sharing with us the information and the resources. Also to you, Roshan, and the rest of the team at WeConnect. Also to Phil this evening for taking the time to spend with us and make the introductions, especially to the importance of what WeConnect is doing and the importance of gender equity, rather, across the board in absolutely everything that we do. Have a great day. Michael, over to you over there, because I know it's still daytime for you. But have a great evening to everybody here in Colombo. And of course, a good weekend. Stay safe, everybody. Good night and God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.